Hi, I'm Jeff Walters, and welcome to The Minutes. And thanks for listening today. It's great to have you along on The Minutes for the week of November the 25th, 2024. This is a City of Thunder Bay podcast. The Minutes takes a look at what happened at Thunder Bay City Council this past week. You can find The Minutes wherever you get your podcasts, including our YouTube channel and our website, thunderbay.ca/The Minutes. If you want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening at City Hall, just hit that subscribe button. On this episode, we'll have a rundown of what happened at this week's City Council meeting and an interview with Rilee Willianen, the city's Encampment Response Plan lead. She was at Council speaking about the proposed location for a temporary village, and we'll hear all about it. But first, Council started off with two announcements. One was a McKellar Ward meeting for Tuesday night. The other was a Niebing Ward meeting slated for 7 p.m. on Wednesday night. Councillor Greg Johnson will host the meeting for the Niebing Ward at the South Niebing Community Centre. City Manager John Collin also announced that the city's housing target, determined by the province, has been exceeded for 2024. There were 241 housing starts as of October 31st of this year. That's 132% of the Building Faster Fund goal of 183 units. The province is expected to confirm the number, which was provided by the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation next month. 57 eligible grant applications have been received to date since the intake for the Housing Accelerator Fund opened in July, having a potential impact of 489 new units for Thunder Bay. This includes units that are part of the missing middle, as well as larger multi-unit buildings to meet a variety of housing needs. The Lakehead Social Planning Council presented its annual Poverty Reduction Strategy annual report to Council on Monday night. The presentation was for information only. There are 5 key areas to the strategy, including children and youth, Indigenous people, housing and homelessness, income security, and health and wellness. Some of the strategies include the Local Living Wage Campaign, the Tiny Homes Committee, the Reaching Home Funding, as well as the Low Income Transit Program. Age-Friendly Thunder Bay also made its annual report to Council this week. Chair Donna Nagy spoke to Council, highlighting what the group accomplished this year. The 2 strategies are funded annually by the city, and they have to report to Council annually to continue to receive their funding. The 3rd strategy, the Thunder Bay Food Strategy, will make its presentation to Council on December the 15th. Council also dealt with one legal matter this week, with Council voting to proceed as directed. City Councillors received a notice of motion on Monday night. The notice is for Council to reconsider the hours of enforcement for parking. Council approved the parking financial plan in February of this year. The notice of motion is needed to reconsider a resolution that was passed and ratified by Council. The notice from Councillor Brian Hamilton requests that on-street parking requirements would be changed to 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. from the current 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. This would change the hours of enforcement to the previous times, but would still include Saturday as a day when parking would need to be paid for. As well, the notice of motion asks for the parking financial plan to be brought back to Council in January of 2026 instead of June of the same year. The notice of motion says while the plan is forward-looking and sets up parking services for financial stability over the next decade, strategies to steer the culture of free parking is needed. It says that an incremental adoption of the plan may have better results than making the changes all at once. Notice was provided on Monday, and that means the item will be debated at the December the 9th Council meeting. City Council spent some time discussing and moving forward with the 2025 capital budget this week. Discussion and debate lasted for about 2.5 hours. No changes were made to the capital budget on Monday. Ratification will take place on December the 9th, with councillors able to make changes that night as well. The approval at Committee of the Whole is much earlier than previous years, with administration looking to have the budget confirmed this year so it can proceed with bids and scheduling for major projects. The capital budget is at $161.8 million this year. That is a 57% growth compared to the previous year, amounting to $58.5 million. The increase is because of several major provincial and federal investments, including spending on the Housing Accelerator Fund, Housing Enabling Water System Fund projects, Building Faster Fund, the Indoor Turf Facility, and Temporary Village. These projects combined have a value of $49 million. The capital budget has a third of its spending funded from grants, about 14% from the municipal tax levy, about a quarter from debentures, and another third from reserve and reserve funds. In August of this year, Council approved a recommendation for a tax increase of no more than 3.8% before growth for both operating and capital budgets. Council also approved a strategy where spending on new capital would be no more than 20% of the capital budget, with the remainder going to maintaining existing assets. This year, budget spending is broken down into a service-based budget instead of a corporate format. The idea is to make it easier to understand where the city is spending the capital budget and how infrastructure and services are impacted by that spending. The report notes that while tax-based contribution to the capital budget will go up by 3.8%, there is also additional money going in with the retirement of the Homes for the Aged debenture. Instead of decreasing the tax rate, the money will now get directed to the capital budget and general capital reserve fund. The report says this is a prudent and temporary measure to increase the amount of infrastructure spending without varying tax levels. In broad terms, about $14 million will get spent on transportation services. That includes roads and fleets, bridges, culverts, stormwater, sidewalks, traffic lights, and street lighting. $21 million will be spent on public works projects, like fixing roads and installing new water and sewer lines at the same time. About $10 million will be spent on waterworks, with another $13.5 million being spent on wastewater. About $2.1 million is slated for the solid waste and recycling facility, $7.7 million for parks and open spaces. Thunder Bay Fire Rescue requires about $800,000, and Thunder Bay Police are budgeting for $2.9 million of capital works. One big area of the capital budget is for arenas, stadia, and aquatics. This area has a proposed capital budget of $39.3 million, of which $32 million is the indoor turf facility. This is 75% of the project's cost and includes the expected amount for construction in 2025. The Thunder Bay Library will spend about $1 million on capital projects, municipal parking services about $2.4 million, and just over $12 million spent at transit. About $11 million will be spent on housing projects, with $5 million going towards the temporary village. The remaining amount would help encourage more housing get built in the city. Superior North EMS will spend about $2.2 million on capital works, and the city will spend about $2.7 million on various capital corporate projects. That includes a $1.4 million expansion to the archives building. Looking ahead, the city projects it will decrease its capital spending to about $85 million in 2026. Most of that is because of the indoor turf facility and capital costs for the temporary village being incurred in 2025. Whether you want to generate rental income, age in place on your own home, support a family member while offering them the independence of their own suite, or just increase the value of your house, an additional dwelling unit might be for you. And right now, the City of Thunder Bay is offering grants through the Housing Accelerator Fund to support the creation of additional units in urban neighborhoods. This includes units created through apartments, additions, and accessory buildings like backyard homes. Eligible homeowners can apply for grants of up to $20,000 per additional unit, with more grants available to help with eligible servicing and application costs. You can learn more and apply today by visiting buildthunderbay.ca. City Council heard on Monday night why administration recommended using a site at 114 Miles Street East, where the former Nesco warehouse was, for a temporary village. As part of its report, administration also recommended excluding a property at 142 Simpson Street, as well as the Kaministiquia River Heritage Park and immediately adjacent properties as future potential locations for a designated encampment. Administration was considering either the site on Miles Street or the Cam River Heritage Park, based on the fact it is municipally owned, close to services, near historical encampment sites, with sufficient space and ready for construction, along with consideration for its current use. Council voted against that recommendation and asked administration to find another list of sites that could be suitable for the temporary village. This means the village concept is still endorsed by Council, just not the location on Miles Street. The village is planned to be in place for a maximum of 5 years, with a potential scaling down of the area as appropriate. Based on a public survey of about 700 people responded to, 68% of respondents favored the Miles Street location. Administration says feedback was generally emphasizing safety, cleanliness, and community inclusion, where there were concerns about downtown revitalization costs and the temporary nature of the project. There is no current report back date for when administration will bring additional sites to Council. We'll hear more about this when Rilee Willianen, the city's encampment lead, joins me here in just a couple of minutes. Council heard on Monday night how city staff are projecting a surplus at the end of 2024 for the city's operations budget. The favorable variance is projected to be $1.6 million, or 0.7% of the city's tax levy of $231.3 million. Rate-supported operations are expected to have a $900,000 surplus, with any money being directed to reserve funds. The positive variance is because of an extra $500,000 in the Municipal Accommodation Tax revenue and $900,000 in Provincial Offences Act fines being received. This revenue was unexpected. Staff vacancies and personnel savings were also found at Superior North EMS in corporate information technology, childcare, and licensing and enforcement budgets. As well, $1.1 million was found from the long-term care budget, mainly because of an increase in grants from the province. There were also some unfavorable variances, with $300,000 being spent on fleet vehicles due to increased costs, $200,000 due to accounting changes and lower revenues in printing and graphics, and $300,000 in the Recreation and Culture Division because of wage increases. Thunder Bay Fire Rescue had an unfavorable variance of about $1 million due to higher WSIB costs, healthcare, physician, and administration fees. Development Services also had a $200,000 variance due to higher than expected tenant vacancies and lower than expected revenues. The landfill site brought in $1 million more revenue than expected, which will be transferred to its reserve fund. Parking had an unfavorable variance of $200,000 due to its new fee structure being implemented later than originally scheduled. Property owners along MacDonnell Street will see some improvements to new curbs and gutters, along with storm sewers from Central Avenue to Squire Street. The cost for this project will be paid for mostly by the property owners under the city's local improvement policy. The city, however, will pay just over $10,000 for work that takes place within the road allowance. Council approved the work for this project on Monday night. The work also includes removing the existing ditches and culverts and creating a grassed boulevard. A petition was signed by property owners along the road, which was verified by the clerk's office. With the petition validated, the work can now proceed. Council heard how the Licensing and Enforcement Division will defer its sign bylaw report until the third quarter of next year. Administration says a comprehensive review of the bylaw is needed to modernize the regulations. More time is needed to consult with industry stakeholders and the public. A first report is slated to be brought to Council in the third quarter of next year. And finally, Council awarded one person a Citizen of Exceptional Achievement Award on Monday night. Elaine McQueen was given a Community Champion Award for her dedication to volunteering through Hospice Northwest, as well as the re-implementation of the volunteer program at Shelter House Thunder Bay. She works to help people in need of compassionate support throughout the city. Congratulations to Elaine. And that's a wrap as to what happened at Council this week. For more information on anything that happens at Council, please visit our website, thunderbay.ca/council. For months, there has been talk about encampments and how to deal with a homeless population in Thunder Bay. From encampment guidelines to potential designated encampment locations to where we are now, the creation of a temporary village. The village would provide a place for people to stay, along with laundry and hygiene facilities, among other things. And at Council on Monday night, administration recommended a location for the temporary village. Council had a lengthy discussion on the proposed location with no final decision made. Rilee Willianen is the Encampment Response Plan Lead for the city. Rilee, thanks for coming into the Minute Studio today.
Thanks, Jeff.
So there were two locations under consideration for the temporary village that were being proposed, Miles Street and the Cam River Heritage Park. Why was Miles Street the proposed location?
Yeah, so a few reasons factored into that recommendation. Cost effectiveness. It's closer to services that people need to access, closer to public transit. There's not an encampment there currently like there is at Cam. If Cam had been the recommended site, there would have been a need to relocate people, and we do that in a dignified and supported way. So that's human resource intensive. It's financially resource intensive. There's a few other reasons, but I think those are kind of the top that drove that decision.
And cost was a big one too, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we had these two locations. Obviously, there was lots of chatter about these proposed locations. You spoke to a lot of groups, especially involved in the South Core, before this decision was made. What did they have to say?
Yeah, so I'd say feedback was pretty mixed. We heard some very strong supportive voices. We also heard some very strong oppositional voices. Regardless of where people stand in their support of the project, however, there's always feedback that we take. And from that feedback, we're able to address what the concerns may be. So, people have concerns about the perception that there will be increased crime, for example. Number one, we know through our research that that's not always true. But number two, we can take steps to address that. So, for example, more lighting in the area. We had a $40,000 commitment to the BIA for them to pay for their own private security company. So although the opposition was there was risk mitigation things that we had put forward to address what those concerns were.
And this wasn't like you just had one meeting with these groups. There was back and forth through this process as well.
Yeah, we had 2 in-person meetings with the BIA, some email communication as well. We also had a public survey, which had 700 respondents. I went and chatted with people who live in encampments, and we also held a surrounding neighborhood drop-in session for residents and businesses. So we had a lot of interactions of public engagement, and we are continuing to communicate with the public as we move forward through this process. What
about the people that live in encampments? You said you spoke with them, and that's a voice we don't always hear as easily. Mm-hmm. What did they have to say to you?
Yeah, so that particular engagement was a smaller group of folks, so I don't want to say that engagement was representative of like the whole population. Sure. But there was definitely some discussions held around the site, the location. So some people felt strongly that they would want to stay on the north side of the city. Some people said they had no preference really on what side of the city it went on. Access to services was something that came through really strongly. So some people highlighted addictions treatment, others healthcare, and then also community inclusion and having a sense of purpose. And community inclusion also came through. People want to feel like they're a part of the neighborhood. So those were the kind of 3 top themes that came through.
There was one thing that I read in the report that I thought was really interesting where we said, if the Miles Street site was selected, the kind of Cam River Heritage Park Simpson area wouldn't become a designated encampment. And what was, I guess, the reason for putting that in there?
Yeah, so that's a result of kind of 2 major factors. Number one, the communities that have similar approaches have had challenges with nearby encampments being established in the area. So taking from those experiences and applying those learnings to our journey, we said that there would be no encampments allowed in the nearby area.
And that's from other cities, you're saying?
That's from other cities, yes. That's something that we've learned through our discussions with our municipal counterparts. Second to that as well, it was a key point of discussion from the Fort William BIA board. And also I think some of the feedback that we got through the surrounding neighborhood drop-in sessions as well. So listening to the concerns and doing what we can to address them. So those 2 things were the reasons why.
When we were at council last night, there was a decision on the table. There was a resolution only written. It didn't go that direction. Maybe you can explain exactly kind of what happened and where do we go from here?
Yeah, so our recommendation was voted down, which was to have Miles as the recommended site. So Miles will no longer be considered in our future site selection process. It is important to understand, though, that the concept of the village does have approval from council. It's conditional on a site recommendation. So though that site failed, the project has not failed. So we're just going to go back to look at the list of properties again against the criteria that we have, and we will rank them in order of suitability to the evaluation criteria that we've already pre-established and bring that back to council for their consideration for them to make a decision on.
Does that criteria change at all?
No.
So we're going back to the drawing board with the same criteria, just different locations?
Same criteria, different locations, and I want people to understand that there will be locations that don't fully fit the criteria, and that will be reflected in where they rank.
So just so people know, was Miles Street, did it fit all the criteria?
Yes.
As well as Cam River?
Cam fit the criteria, but Miles fit it better.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you know how many sites you have to look at this point?
There's lots of municipally owned property. So we'll start looking, also keeping in mind that the sites that we bring forward have to fit within the cost envelopes that have already been identified and approved. So that will knock out some sites that could be up for consideration. But at this point, I can't give you a number on how many will come forward to council.
Any idea on timelines? Because I know we had some aggressive timelines to get this going at first, and how does this change that? Yeah,
so this absolutely will mean we're not in a place to implement by April 30th. The work that will be required to take a look at all of these municipally owned properties is quite extensive. It involves various departments, so we don't have a report back date in mind yet. Also, though, we do know that this project has urgency, so I anticipate that we'll be back sometime next year.
Rilee Willianen, she is the Encampment Response Plan Lead with the City, and she joined me here today in the Minutes studio. And a big thanks for listening to the Minutes this week. Of course, if you want more information about City Council, agendas, or minutes, just visit thunderbay.ca/council. If you want to listen to past episodes or maybe provide some feedback, visit thunderbay.ca/theminutes. You can also find the Minutes wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, you can find us on YouTube and on our website as well. That's thunderbay.ca/theminutes. If you want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening at City Hall, just hit that subscribe button. I'm Jeff Walters. Thanks for listening this week. We'll chat again next week. Make it a great day.